thank you for coming to this session. And there's going to be a second part on October the 3rd. So hopefully there will be a continuation of this session. So hopefully you can all join, and I'll be able to be there virtually in person, more interactive than this recording. So I'm coming from Gehl. Gehl is an urban design and strategy studio based in Copenhagen. And we really, at the core of all of our work, study everyday behavior to shape built environment conditions and urban systems that allow people to thrive. And what that means, is a lot of different, these are some of our projects and places that we've worked around the world. But from our perspective, we really believe that applying this people-first approach to the planning and design and strategy of our cities, we're able to make vibrant places that attract people and build community. Our background of our team is a combination. So we really bridge disciplines. We have a great degree of urban designers and architects. We have social scientists, and we have systems thinkers. We have data scientists, and we really come at this with a multidisciplinary approach that allows us to tackle some of these urban, wicked urban problems that you all are working with every day in your careers in urbanism. And it all began with this man, with Jan Gehl, who is an architect in Copenhagen in the 60s, trained in the modernist tradition, and really one day kind of fell in love with a woman who's a behavioral psychologist, and asked him, what is the experience of a human being in that thing that you're drawing? And he didn't have a very good answer for her. And so at that point, he took a turn from the academy and, the thinking at the time that was very, life and play and work were all very separate functions as far as design goes. And he really, they took a turn and began to really go to some of the great cities around the world and around Europe and study how people are using space and what kinds of spatial conditions encourage or discourage certain kinds of behaviors. He filled up all of these notebooks and collected all of these research and taught for years at the Royal Danish Academy, and then eventually started a business with one of somebody he was studying with or was teaching. And so the methods, have evolved over the years, and I'll get into some of that today of, practically what that looks like in our practice, and hopefully sharing some tools that are helpful for you all. But, at the core of this work, it remains the same, of really studying people and understanding how the space is inviting or not inviting certain kinds of behaviors or certain kinds of people to spend time and enjoy their city. And just as a recap, this is really the core of how we approach design problems and planning problems. And often it's the other way around, where starting with the building design and then, figuring out what's the leftover space, and then the life, you see if people use it or you don't. And we really believe that it's critical to start with the life that's already there and understand what is happening, what's not happening, set some clear vision and goals for what we want to happen, and then, figure out the space and how that can respond to people's needs from there. And then lastly, we can talk about buildings and programming. And so today I'm going to go through a little bit of, I've already said this word public life multiple times, and just go through a little bit of what that means, and then run through some of our public life data tools, and then get specific on how we use the public life app. So public life is, a lot of different things. So it can be big and organized and civic, and it can be small and everyday and casual. These incredible planned events that you have on your calendar for months, but also these spontaneous things that unfold on, your favorite streets and in your favorite cities. Both what you love to do and kind of the joy and really special sauce of this. And, to this effect, and many of the leaders in this group have committed to being an urban 95 city and really understanding what the experience of a city is like from the first 95 centimeters of someone's life. And so we know that, raising families and children in cities is such a critical piece of public life, and being able to do so in a way that breeds a healthy life and doesn't encourage people to that because they have a child or they have two children that they have to move away from the city. But actually the city can be designed to accommodate a really positive and nurturing space for early childhood development. And as I said, as we go into the public life tools, I'll get a little bit more into how we might measure a little bit to understand for the experience of somebody 95 centimeters or below. But essentially, public life is what people create together when they live their life outside of their home, their workplace, and their cars, and they're invited to come together and create shared experiences. And, when we look at the way cities are designed, oftentimes it's done in this really siloed manner of, different people owning different parts of the street or operating different parts of the street. And often these different departments or even sometimes it's in the same department, but different people are owning a piece of the puzzle, but not, actually working together. But from the human perspective, that doesn't matter. People don't see any of that. So that's why for us, it's so important to actually focus on the lived experience, because these silos are not contributing to how people actually experience the city. So by focusing on public life and centering that, we really think that we're able to create a more positive urban environment rather than focusing on just a piece of the puzzle. And we know that, sensors and technology and urban monitoring systems can really help with this, and they can assist us. But for us, observation is key. These small little understandings of, sensors can let you know that there is a bench there and kind of the amount of public seating or the amount of people, but really right now lack the ability to tell you a little bit more about the quality. Why is nobody sitting in that seat? And, why is he kind of around the corner? Because he's able to have his back protected maybe and be a little bit outside of the sidewalk. And just some of these kind of small, softer, if you will, details that about behavior and space and that relationship that end up being really critical to design processes and centering people and making sure that their voices and their behaviors are heard in the process. Computer models can't predict these kind of behaviors and informal gatherings that are so important to see, of actually just getting on the ground and walking around and spending a good deal of time in a neighborhood, in a street, in a city that you're interested in changing or in growing in some way. Because of these, all of these unpredictable moments and way people are using the space. Sometimes for good or for bad, right? When people are really desperate for a seat, they make do with what's there. And so again, not something that can always be told, with sensors that might let you know that there's people there and maybe measures these people as standing, but not let you know that there's a real latent desire for some quality public seating and maybe some opportunities for children to play in the street. Right. Or these kind of, broken sidewalks and things like that. Just understanding how people are navigating the city is really key on an observational level. And I think this is, what we understand of the discrepancy oftentimes between the user experience and design, that, this from a map and from a plan view, this person would be kind of a dot on the map and be kind of labeled as an abstract term as a pedestrian. But when we're getting on the ground, we actually see that, maybe it looks fine in plan and like technically it is possible to walk here, but at the eye level, this is quite a painful and a little bit of a humiliating experience. And so, how are we going to invite people to walk and to bike and to spend time in their cities if we're not giving them quality invitations to do so? And so, how do we understand this and study public life? And of course, it's studying people, as you guessed. And so when we really can pay attention to people and understand what are the things that they're desiring and needing from a space, they will adopt it and adopt the behaviors that the space is kind of nudging them towards. And when we don't, they'll ignore it and do what's most comfortable always. It doesn't matter how much time and money was spent into figuring out the stone of this path and how it was laid out. If it's not the most comfortable and the easiest and kind of the best experience, people won't use it. So now I'm going to get a little bit more into, specifically what are our public life and public space data tools, and how do we understand this relationship between the built environment and everyday behavior in cities. And so, this is the Gehl lens is really this bundle of methods and, a combination of things. And we really, really think that it's important to lean on this multidisciplinary effect of, both the public life observation that I've been talking a bit about it, and we'll get into more detail, but also talking to people and running focus groups and having locals on the ground walk us around and tell us about their neighborhood, because they're the experts and they're living there and working there every day. Doing this higher level GIS, big data analysis, layering that in, asking really specific demographic questions and to understand sentiment among certain groups with online surveys, using social media analysis to understand perception and emotion and attachment to place. So we really use a kind of a bundle of methods here to understand what is the lived experience of a place, and I'll walk through some of those things. And so the first one is our public life app that we'll go into how exactly this works in a bit, but it's really to understand some simple questions of who is there, how many are there, what are they doing, and what are they not doing. And if we have a specific question on age and looking specifically at early childhood development, we can really measure what we care about and be quite specific with the age groups and how people are walking or staying and what they're doing when they're choosing to spend time in public space. The second piece is this qualitative spatial analysis. So, from mapping destinations and what are the amenities close by and what's the program and the use of the neighborhood, to understanding, we have this hierarchy of spatial qualities, which I'll walk through in a minute, but, it's kind of operates like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs of basic protection in a space. Without these, nobody is going to stay. Some pieces about comfort, and without the comfort, people might come, but they would never stay. And then, enjoyment. This is the difference between making good places and then making really great places where people want to spend a lot of time. And so we call this kind of our urban quality criteria. It's our cheat sheet for, kind of putting a little bit of more of a rigor and analysis to these gut feelings when you go to a place and your favorite square, your favorite street, and it feels really good. There's actually some specific things that are contributing to that kind of innate human reaction of positive reaction to a space or really negative reaction of a space. And so, as I said, this kind of base layer of feeling safe and secure from traffic and from violence and from the weather, that's kind of the base layer of what you have to have. And then we have this second layer of comfort of, being able to see and walk and talk and listen. And then this last layer of delight and enjoyment and really being able to have a specific sense of identity and appeal to the senses. And so, we know that feeling safe looks different culturally, right? In some cases, it's totally fine to have this more open plan where there's a truck coming down and people are dining outside and that feels fine to people. Or, in other contexts, it's possible, it feels fine to have everything on the same layer here and being able to move about. Where in other contexts, we actually need some more spatial delineation for people to feel safe against traffic. Feeling secure against lighting is also about this, or feeling secure against violence is also about lighting and presence of people at night, and safety is a really complicated thing. And so I think this is where some of our other qualitative methods of talking to people and understanding what does safety mean and for who is really, an important factor to kind of layer on here and understand what makes people feel safe and a sense of, belonging in a space. And then, microclimate. Is it possible for people to sit in the sun and enjoy it when it's warm out, or to have the shade when it's too hot? And then this next piece about comfort, that are really the pieces that will invite people to stay. Are there opportunities to walk, come in, not just, crowded on a street or right next to car traffic, but be able to walk really comfortably and freely and be engaged as it happens, right? So not just the ability to walk, but being able to walk with adequate space, being able to sit, and sit comfortably, invitations to relax and a diversity of seating. opportunities to talk and to listen. So, to be social and share intimate moments, but also to be, to be quiet and just maybe, eat your meal and listen in on other conversations and spend some solo time. To opportunities to people watch. So humans are most fascinated with other humans, and giving people the opportunity to observe what's happening in the space is often what attracts people most to spending time somewhere. And then, this piece about, is there opportunities for play or exercise? And again, when we're designing cities for children, this is especially important of, inviting families to be able to spend significant time in a place and giving them opportunities to be playful and engage and have social experiences that feel safe and nourishing. And then this last piece, about delight and enjoyment is really only going to work if these other two of safety and comfort are there. So oftentimes we find, sometimes designers really jump into the aesthetic pieces and the identity, but without the safety and the comfort, then nobody uses the place. So, this is about things relating to your human scale and being active facades and ground floors that people can engage with freely. Identity in a really distinct place and kind of attachment that people put on a specific place. And then lastly, aesthetic qualities and there being positive sensory experiences attached. And, we have this kind of cheat sheet of the quality criteria that you can go through and kind of check how something is ranking with each of these categories. But I think also a big piece of it is just documenting, right? Because we have these moments like this where you can tell something has really been designed in the plan, but actually the user experience is really uncomfortable. So just, taking your phone and your camera and watching people and snapping some photos of, how people are responding to the space sometimes is actually the most helpful public life data tool. We also do, a facade analysis of how the facades are engaging people or not engaging people, of, is it vibrant and what's the transparency and opacity, and how is the building contributing to the street life, on a scale from vibrant to inactive, and then, mapping that out and being able to, put that in combination with, functions and lighting and seating, and then, overlaying this with the public life data of where people are staying. And always people are staying in the environments that make them feel good and, have the active facades, have seating, have lighting. But getting this kind of spatial inventory of how the built environment, what's the quality of the built environment and how that's relating to people's experiences and where they're choosing to spend time is a really important starting point for any design process of changing things or inviting different kinds of life. Because we know on the facade analysis that to feel stimulated and happy, the human brain needs about 1,000 stimuli an hour, and that's about once every 4 seconds. And from a very early age, we're walking at 5 kilometers an hour, which means, that's approximately 6 meters, and that feels like the rhythm of actually a good, vibrant commercial street. So it and you feel it in your physiology when you're walking down, a commercial street or a residential street, even with these very articulate facades, that it feels really good to you. And this feels like a place you want to spend time. Or you're walking down other spaces that, maybe have beautiful materials, but because it's not responding to your human senses, you will walk by this faster and think that it takes longer. And so, tools like this facade analysis are really ways to start measuring those kind of inherent feelings that we have as human beings in urban spaces of what feels good and what doesn't feel good, to be able to start to put some data to, why this is a better place to build than this. We also do test walks, right? And understanding what it's like to get from one experience to the other, because, maybe on your map it says, well, it's just a 10-minute walk, but then we can actually walk it and see, it said it was going to take 24 minutes, but it ended up taking 37 minutes. And there was all these barriers on the way and, things that are confusing along. So I think, again, just this lived experience of not taking for granted kind of what is the 10,000 foot view of a place, to actually what is the qualitative experience of a person walking that. And then, what about a person with a stroller or a pram, or a person, carrying a child and holding another child's hand, right? And so understanding these lived experiences from different perspectives is really crucial for how we make good spaces and how we invite those people to spend time. We also map lighting, right? And understanding that, where there's lighting is also, how people spend time, and it correlates directly to, where people feel comfortable, and where there's lighting and programmed, all ages want to spend time. And when it's dark, maybe there's only a certain sect of people that would feel comfortable walking down that block. And so again, when we're talking about age inclusivity, or, maybe extending urban invitations to populations that are more vulnerable, like young children and families, it's really important that this base level of safety and of comfort are met. Otherwise, then people won't feel invited or comfortable to spend time. And so that was a lot about our qualitative spatial analysis, but we also, as I mentioned, we want to get direct feedback from the community. So we'll do targeted online surveys. And this is really to understand sentiment and behavior as it relates to demographics. So something that is missed out with the observational study is that we make assumptions about people's age and gender to get a general sense of who is there, but we don't make assumptions about race or income or education level or things like that are things that people need to self-identify. And so the online surveys are a really great place for people to do that and ask really specific questions so we can understand, certain behaviors or feelings and as it relates to certain groups of people. So, for instance, we had in a couple sites in the US, we're doing a large survey to understand impact and, among race and how different races felt this place was special to them. We were able to see that, in certain kinds of spaces, like in nature spaces, for instance, the respondents who were Black felt, answered less often that this place was special for them. So, that's an insight for the group to understand there's something happening here that is making certain groups and particularly Black residents feel unwelcome here, and there's some barriers that we need to remove. So the online survey is a really important tool to kind of get specific around these more specific groups that you might have, and again, maybe it's young children and parents, and understanding their specific experience and feeling as it relates to a place. And we also do this through social media. And so not asking people directly, but, taking really big data and collecting Instagram posts from a lot of different cities and processing both the caption text and also the photo and what they're taking pictures of to understand, where people are and what they're taking photos of, and get a sense of what are the emotions that they're putting into this place, and how do people feel about this place. And there's a lot of different ways we can do this, but again, this is kind of the Gehl lens of bundling methods and going from the very big data down to the specific questions and asking someone something quite directly. We also do beyond the online surveys, we also do intercept surveys going on site and using this data to ask people who are spending time in the place directly some questions. There's some, it can be used to compare across different sites. There is some kind of inherent biases with that of, who is collecting the data and what's the kind of day, and it's a Saturday, and are there certain people that can't come spend time in public space on a Saturday because they're working. And so there are some things to be mindful of with the intercept survey, but it's a really great way to get kind of a pulse of what's again the demographic background, how people self-identify that, how did they get there, and then again, like, what is their sentiment of the space and how they're using the space and how they're feeling about it. We can also adapt the quality criteria for really specific things. So for example, with the urban 95 and understanding what the city is like from the first 95 centimeters of someone's life, we can adapt this to really understand more specifically what are the protection elements that young children or young families need, and what are some of these basic needs and interactions. So again, it's about really measuring what you care about and the tools, the Gehl tools continue to evolve with, project and specific process, but at the core, it's again really understanding what are people, how is the city responding to people's needs or not responding to people's needs, and how can we measure that, and what are the specific needs that we're trying to understand here, and then we adapt our tools based on that, so we have a clear understanding of how a place is meeting or not meeting those needs. And so, as you can see, it's built on these decades of understanding and different projects and different scales and certain audiences, but it's meant to use, data at a lot of different scales and, both really deep and really wide data to make meaningful stories and then, make some strategies and design based on that. And so now you have a little bit of a sense of, the broad range of Gehl methods and the Gehl lens. And we're going to dive more deeply into the observational piece of it now, and specifically what we look for and how the public life app works. And then I'll give you an example, so hopefully you can go out and test the tool yourself, and then we can come back together on Sunday and walk through what's the output of that data collection and what are the stories, and how do we move from observation to design. So when we're doing observational studies, we look for two things. So people moving and people staying, people traveling through the space, and then people who are spending time in the space. And we're asking, again, these really simple questions, but things like, is this a place where people are only passing through, or is this a place where people want to spend time? Are people, accommodated to walk and bike at all? And then with people staying, is this a place that has many different invitations? Are there different ages that are represented here? Are there different genders? Is it only, pay to play kind of places that are only commercial activity, or can people be in the space and access the space without having to buy something? Is there social activity in the space? And then again, depending on what we're studying, we can get really specific with these questions of, how is this accommodating young children, and are there enough, activities, or are there resources for mothers in the space? Or if we're asking, specific questions around food, like what are people eating in the space? And so, yeah, again, we can get really deep into what is the life that's here to inform, our goals and the life that we want to ultimately invite into a space. And so with people moving, we're looking specifically at what's the age and the gender of people moving, what's the amount of people moving, are they on foot, are they on bike, are they on other wheels, are there mobility challenges? And with people staying, again, we're looking at the perceived age, the perceived gender. What is their posture? Is everybody standing in the space? Is everybody sitting in a cafe seat where they've had to buy a coffee? Or is there public seating? Are people lying on the ground, or, are they sitting on the ground because there's not adequate seating? And then what are they doing? Are they talking to each other, or is everybody on their phone? Or is this a place where a lot of children are playing, or mothers are breastfeeding? What's happening here? And when people are choosing to spend time, what are they doing? And so I'll walk through kind of a couple things of what we measure, and these things I'm saying, like posture and activity. What do I mean by that, and what does that look like? So when you go out and collect data, you have a sense of what that might look like. So with posture, we're talking about how people are physically situated. So are people standing in a space? And sometimes that's looks like waiting or queuing, and sometimes it's not a choice, right? There's not a seat, and so they're standing around because they don't have a place to sit. Public seating, so this is anybody can sit here. It could be fixed bench, or it could be movable. Sitting commercial is this kind of pay to play seat that I spoke about, that's connected to a cafe or a restaurant, or something where you've had to purchase something to use the seat. Sitting informal, and this could be sitting on anything that wasn't explicitly designed to be a seat, or it could be bring your own seating, so people are bringing folding chairs or things like that. Lying down, taking a nap, sunbathing. And then the activities. So as we mark activities, we also know people can be doing more than one. So A lot of times, waiting for public transit, this is kind of more of the necessary activities of public space. Waiting for a taxi or rideshare, can be a little bit hard to tell, but if it's very explicit that somebody is waiting for a shared car or waving down a taxi. Engage with commerce, so both the people that are buying and selling something in a space. Engaging with a cultural activity, so somebody that is performing, but also the people that are watching and engage with that performance. Exercise or play in a place. They can be for all ages. So exercise is a little bit more sports and fitness oriented, and play is a little bit more free flowing. But again, it can be for all ages. And then we have kind of observing and people watching, and this is passive recreation of people just hanging out and spending time. Another passive activity of reading or writing in a public space or listening. Using electronics, so people on their phones or on their computers. And then, eating or drinking and having a bite to eat or something to drink in public space. Are people talking? Is this a sociable space? Are they having big conversations? And then civic work. Are there people who are actually working on the public space here? And then we have, as I mentioned, we have more specific activities when we have more specific questions. And so in the case of Urban 95 and looking at, young children in a city, we'll measure really specifically are caregivers taking care of a child or children? Are they changing a diaper? Are they feeding a child? Are they playing with the child, etc.? And so that's an overview of what we're looking for. And now I'm going to go into kind of the nitty gritty of how it works actually in the Public Life app. And so some things to keep in mind when we're talking about an app, it's actually hosted on your browser. So you don't need to download anything, but it does require a smartphone and it requires data, and it's not data intensive. It doesn't take a lot of data, but it does take some battery. So come with a charged phone if you're going to be surveying for a while, or bring an extra charger. In this case, we're not setting up to do kind of a formal survey. So this is just something that I'm hoping you all can test out, as you're walking around your city, and it shouldn't require, too much preparation. But this is the Public Life app login is called gehl.publiclifeapp.com, and I'll provide a username in a little bit here, but there's a username and password, and this is kind of what the home screen looks like, and it is case sensitive. There's kind of a trick here at the bottom of your screen. There's an up arrow, and you can hit something that says save to home screen, and it will make an app button on your phone. So then you don't have to pull up your browser and find the website every time. So that's kind of a cheat for the app. But you'll see, when you log onto your homepage, you'll see a list of tasks of, different places, observations that you're being assigned for the day. And so you'll see your list of tasks and you'll hit select start. It'll show you a confirmation page. When you see your first count, you can check your location and then you can begin counting. And so when we count people moving, what we're meaning here is you stand at the location you see on your map, you draw an imaginary line across the street, and then for 10 minutes, you count all pedestrians and people on wheels moving through the space and tally them according to their age and their gender. Or mode, if that's what you were counting. In this case, we're going to be counting age and gender, but you count for exactly 10 minutes, no more, no less. And it's just like this diagram that you see here on the right, that you are the person in the red. You're standing approximately where you see the line is on your map, and you're counting those who are crossing it back and forth. And so it works like this. This is what it looks like, is that, after 10 minutes, this will come up and you're going to be tapping to tally. There's also options to add photos and add notes after your 10-minute count is over. But it's pretty simple, really. It's just for those 10 minutes tallying everybody that crosses your line according to their age and to their gender. And again, this, piece about measuring what you care about, the counts that I've set up for you all look really specifically at, young children. And so we have on the bottom here, we kind of have our classic categories of children, teenagers, adults, and seniors. And then we split our baby and toddlers up into actually 6 subcategories. So you can see here on the right, we have a specific count for, is it a baby or a toddler who's being supported by, a pram or, something like that? Is it a baby or toddler who's being carried? Is it a baby or toddler who's walking independently? Somebody that's up to 5 years old that's walking independently, or up to 5 being carried or being supported in some way. So really getting specific about how children are moving through the space. If that's something we want to design for and create cities where children and young families can thrive, then we need to know, specifically how children are using the cities. And, is it always a place where children are carried because it's not safe for them to walk on the sidewalk, or it's too challenging, or there's not a lot of baby or toddlers being supported because the sidewalks are not friendly, for strollers, some things like that. And then with people staying, it's a little bit different. So it's not specifically timed, but you'll have kind of a large area outlined on your map, like you can see on the diagram here. And you take a lap through the space, and you take a, kind of a calculated walk through. And as you walk through the area marked on your map, you capture a snapshot as the activities. So, people staying as you move through the space, you don't worry about new things that happen behind you, because you're just capturing, at this moment in time, this is the activity and this is the public life profile of people staying here. And so it looks like this. So you can see on the video here, you just tap the screen, and then these dialogue prompts will come up to, what is the age, what is the posture, the gender, and the activities of a place. You can also, there's a function called copy last, that if you see a bunch of mothers spending time, and it is quite time consuming to go through and fill all of those things, you can hit the copy last button, and it will preload all of the selections you've made in the previous entry, and then you can modify 1 or 2 things. So maybe she has a little bit of a different age, or her activity is a little bit different. So that's something here. It's also possible to add notes and add photos now. And so, this is, again, as we walk through with the spatial analysis and observational thing, just being in the space and understanding the everyday behavior is so crucial. So really encourage you to use that function and add notes, or take photos, or, take them on your own accord and bring a notebook, and understand, what is the public life that's happening in this place. And so we have, with stationary activity, we have kind of 4 different modules. We have age, and again, this is more specific for, Urban 95 and measuring young children. We have specific age categories, but are we talking about a child or a toddler, a kid, a young adult or a teenager, an adult, and a senior? So these age groups are broad, and they're meant to be broad. So it's just to make an assumption on kind of what age approximately you think somebody is. And then, their posture as I walk through, how are they situated in space? What is their perceived gender? We're not asking anybody what their gender is, but we're making an assumption. And then activity is what are they doing? And again, you can check multiple activities, or if there's something that's not listed here, there is an other category. And so this is something that I'm hoping you can all try out. And so I'll leave this up for a minute. And because I know people are calling in from kind of all over the region, it's too complicated to make kind of specific surveys, because I'm not sure where everyone's location is. So what I've done here is actually create a test that has a really large polygon around Istanbul, and a one moving count here. And so I'm hoping you can log in with this information here, and then just use the polygon, use a section of it if that's somewhere close to you, or go to a public space that is near you and kind of just pretend that the map is the public space, and don't worry about it not matching up, but it's just for you to get a sense of the user interface. And then in our next session, I'll go through kind of what is the output of this, and how do we move from data collection to stories. So, and also what I've done, because there are quite a few of you, and instead of making a lot of different usernames, what I've done is just assign a lot of different hours. So you'll see ones, at 2 in the morning and 3 in the morning. And so I encourage everyone to just select an hour that hasn't been selected by someone else. And if it has been, it will say in progress. So just pick kind of a random hour and get counting. And so don't worry about it being the right hour or the right location. It's just for you to get a sense of what this user interface is. And then we can come back together on Sunday and talk a little bit more specifically about, you know, how that looks and how we actually use this data to form insights. And so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate all of you listening in and taking this inside look at what some of the public life data tools that we use at Gehl are. And I'm hoping that I'll see some of you for, you know, a more interactive session on Sunday to go from data to stories to design. And so thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.